Hey guys, tonight you wake up in Imperial China, and your husband just sold you to pay his gambling debts. Your mother-in-law is sharpening a knife while eyeing your feet. We'll get to why those feet are about to become your prison for life. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations! You've just been born female in Imperial China, sometime around the Ming Dynasty. The midwife takes one look between your legs, and her face drops like she's just seen a ghost holding unpaid taxes. Your father storms out of the room without a word. Your grandmother mutters something about wasted rice and starts calculating how much your eventual marriage might bring in. Welcome to the world, where your entire existence will be measured by how well you can disappear. The first thing you need to understand about being a woman in Imperial China is that you're not really a person. You're more like a very expensive, very fragile piece of furniture that everyone hopes will eventually pay for itself. Your birth is recorded not as the arrival of a new human, but as a future transaction. The family ledger doesn't celebrate you. It starts calculating your cost. Your mother looks at you with a mixture of love and pity that you won't understand for years. She knows what's coming. The binding, the beatings, the suffocating rules that will slowly squeeze the life out of you like a python made of social expectations. But right now, you're just a baby. You have maybe 3 or 4 years before the real horror begins. Let's be clear about something. When people today talk about historical oppression of women, they usually mean things like not being able to vote or own property. In Imperial China, you can't do those things either. But that's honestly the least of your problems. Your problems are more immediate, like the fact that your feet are about to be deliberately broken and reshaped into something that will make walking excruciating for the rest of your life. You spend your early years crawling around the family compound, which is basically a collection of connected buildings arranged around courtyards. The place smells like incense, cooking oil, and the perpetual mustiness of too many people living in too small a space. Your world extends maybe 50 yards in any direction. This is important because once your feet are bound, 50 yards might as well be 50 miles. Your daily routine starts before dawn. You wake up on a hard wooden bed that you share with your mother and possibly a sister or two, depending on how many girls your father decided to keep. The mattress is stuffed with straw that pokes through the thin fabric and leaves you with tiny scratches across your back. Your first sensation every morning is the cold air hitting your face and the sound of your grandmother's voice cutting through the darkness like a rusty blade. The grandmother runs everything. Your father might technically be the head of the household, but grandmother is the supreme commander of all things domestic, which means she controls your entire existence. She's the one who decides when you eat, what you wear, how you sit, how you speak, and eventually, how your feet will be mutilated in the name of beauty. Breakfast is rice porridge. Always rice porridge. Sometimes with a few vegetable scraps floating in it if the family is feeling generous. You eat it with wooden chopsticks that are too big for your small hands, so half of it ends up on your clothes. Your grandmother watches every bite and criticizes your posture, your manners, your breathing. Everything you do is wrong, and she's happy to tell you exactly how wrong it is. The other women in the household exist in a careful hierarchy that you're slowly learning to navigate. Your mother occupies a middle position, respected as the mother of sons, but constantly reminded that she failed to produce enough of them. Your aunts, if they're unmarried, are basically unpaid servants with a side of social shame. If they're married, they're temporary visitors who everyone treats with suspicious politeness. And then there are the servants. Actual servants, women from families even poorer than yours, who do the heavy cleaning and cooking. You learn quickly that being female in Imperial China is like being trapped in a very elaborate game of hierarchy where everyone above you gets to make your life miserable, and the only people below you are the ones who weren't lucky enough to be born into a family that could afford to keep their daughters. Your mother teaches you the basics of being a proper Chinese woman. How to sit with your ankles crossed and your hands folded. How to speak quietly and never, ever disagree with a man. How to embroider flowers on silk that you'll never be able to afford. How to pour tea with the precise angle of wrist that indicates respect without subservience. These lessons feel like learning to breathe underwater. The embroidery is particularly torturous. You spend hours bent over tiny pieces of fabric, pushing needles through silk with fingers that are perpetually pricked and bleeding. Your grandmother inspects your work with the enthusiasm of someone examining a fresh dog turd. The stitches are too loose, too tight, too visible, too uneven. You redo the same flower 17 times until your eyes burn and your back aches like you've been carrying rocks. But the embroidery serves a purpose beyond decoration. It's training. Training your fingers to be precise, your posture to be perfect, your mind to focus on tiny, repetitive tasks without complaint. Because complaining is not an option. Complaining is what happens right before you get beaten with a bamboo switch that leaves welts across your shoulders. Your world is divided into spaces you can occupy and spaces you cannot. The front courtyard where your father meets with other men is absolutely forbidden. The kitchen is sometimes acceptable, depending on what's being prepared and who needs help. The women's quarters in the back of the compound are your primary territory, and your bedroom is where you'll spend increasingly more time as you get older and your mobility decreases. The other children in the compound are your brothers and male cousins, who treat you like a slightly interesting pet that might bite if provoked. They attend school. They learn to read and write. They practice calligraphy and study for the imperial examinations that might one day lift the family out of poverty. Meanwhile, you practice sitting still for hours without moving. Let's talk about the sitting. Because sitting, it turns out, is an art form that takes years to master when you're female in Imperial China. You can't slouch. You can't lean. You can't rest your elbows on anything. You can't cross your legs. You can't let your feet touch the ground flat. You must sit with your spine perfectly straight, your shoulders back, your chin level, your hands positioned just so, for hours at a time. The punishment for improper sitting is a bamboo rod across your shoulders. Not hard enough to cause permanent damage, but hard enough to leave marks that sting for days. Your grandmother administers these corrections with the casual efficiency of someone swatting flies. She doesn't get angry. She doesn't raise her voice. She just whacks you and continues whatever conversation she was having. Your education consists primarily of memorizing moral stories about virtuous women who sacrificed everything for their families. These stories always end with the woman dying tragically, but beautifully, usually after spending years caring for ungrateful relatives or remaining faithful to deceased husbands. The moral is always the same. Your value as a woman is measured by how much suffering you can endure with a smile. One of your favorite stories, if you can call it that, is about a woman who cut off pieces of her own flesh to make soup for her sick mother-in-law. Another features a widow who threw herself into her husband's funeral pyre rather than remarrying. These are presented as inspiring examples of feminine virtue that you should aspire to emulate. The irony, of course, is that while you're memorizing these stories about self-sacrifice, the men in your family are learning poetry, philosophy, history, and mathematics. They're preparing to take examinations that could lead to government positions, wealth, and respect. You're preparing to disappear into another family where you'll spend the rest of your life serving people who will never know your name. Your brothers, when they acknowledge your existence at all, treat you with a mixture of indifference and mild annoyance. You're useful for fetching things, mending their clothes, and serving their meals. Beyond that, you're mostly invisible. They don't hate you. They just don't think about you as a person with thoughts, feelings, or desires of your own. This invisibility is actually something of a protection. The more attention you attract, the more criticism you receive. The goal is to be perfectly unremarkable, while simultaneously being perfectly accomplished at all the tiny, tedious tasks that make up a woman's life. It's like trying to be the most invisible person in a room while juggling flaming torches. Your mother tries to prepare you for what's coming, but her warnings are coded in metaphor and whispered conversations that stop when the men come near. She tells you stories about flowers that bloom only in darkness, about rivers that run deep and quiet, about birds that sing most beautifully when caged. You don't understand most of what she's trying to tell you, but you sense the sadness underneath her words. The compound where you live is your entire universe. High walls topped with ceramic tiles keep the outside world at bay. The main gate is always guarded, always locked, always off limits to you. You can hear the sounds at the street beyond, merchants calling their wares, children playing, the clip-clop of horses, but you might as well be hearing sounds from another planet. Inside the walls, life moves according to rigid schedules determined by the seasons, the lunar calendar, and the whims of the men who control everything. You wake when the rooster crows. You eat when food is served. You sleep when darkness falls. Your time is not your own. Your body is not your own. Your future is definitely not your own. The clothing you wear is designed to restrict movement and emphasize your status as property. Multiple layers of robes that tangle around your legs when you try to walk quickly. Sleeves that extend past your fingertips and make simple tasks unnecessarily complicated. Fabric that's beautiful but impractical, expensive but fragile. Everything about your appearance is meant to signal that you're too valuable to work and too delicate to function independently. Your hair is another form of control. Long, heavy, and styled in increasingly elaborate arrangements as you get older. It takes hours to wash and dry. It requires constant maintenance to keep it neat and properly arranged. It's basically a built-in reminder that you don't have anything more important to do with your time than worry about your appearance. And then there's the makeup. White powder mixed with lead that slowly poisons you while making your skin look pale and smooth. Rouge made from cinnabar that contains mercury. Kohl for your eyebrows that contains antimony. You're literally painting your face with toxic chemicals in the name of beauty, and everyone acts like this is perfectly normal. The lead powder is particularly insidious. It gives you the fashionably pale complexion that signals you don't work outdoors, but it also causes gradual neurological damage. Over years of daily use, it leads to memory problems, mood changes, and eventually, serious illness. But pale skin is so essential to feminine beauty that no one questions the cost. Your daily routine revolves around maintaining this artificial appearance. Hours spent grinding powder, mixing pigments, and applying everything with brushes made from rabbit hair. Your face becomes a mask that you put on each morning and carefully maintain throughout the day. Smiling too widely might crack the powder. Crying would ruin everything. The worst part is that this isn't vanity. This is survival. Your marriageability depends entirely on your appearance and your ability to attract a good. Marriage is the only thing standing between your family and potential disaster. You're not maintaining your looks for your own pleasure. You're maintaining them because your family's financial future might depend on how well you can transform yourself into an object of desire. But we haven't even gotten to the feet yet. Around your 5th birthday, your mother starts talking about lotus blossoms and golden lily. She speaks in hushed tones about the beauty of small things, the elegance of delicate steps, the way a true lady moves like a gentle breeze. You don't understand why she looks so sad when she talks about these beautiful things. Your grandmother begins examining your feet with the critical eye of someone appraising livestock. She measures the length, width, and arch. She flexes your toes and manipulates your ankles. She nods with satisfaction when she determines that your feet are the right size and shape for what's coming. The binding begins on an auspicious day selected by consulting the lunar calendar and possibly bribing a fortune teller. Your mother heats a basin of water mixed with herbs and alum. The smell is medicinal and bitter, like someone boiled a handful of weeds with a dash of desperation. You sit on a low stool while your mother washes your feet with unusual tenderness. She massages each toe, traces the arch of each foot, and whispers apologies that you don't yet understand. Your grandmother stands nearby with strips of white cloth and a look of grim determination. What happens next is going to hurt more than anything you've ever experienced. More than the bamboo switch across your shoulders. More than the hunger when rice runs low. More than the constant criticism and endless rules. This is going to hurt in a way that rewrites your understanding of what pain can be. Your grandmother folds your 4 smaller toes under your foot and begins wrapping them with strips of cloth. Tight, tighter than you thought possible. The pain is immediate and shocking, like someone lit your feet on fire from the inside. You scream, but no one stops. Your mother holds your shoulders while your grandmother continues wrapping. The goal is to break the bones in your toes and fold them under your foot, to compress your arch until it forms a deep cleft, to reshape your entire foot into something that resembles a lotus bud, about 3 to 4 inches long, pointed at the toe, with a pronounced arch that creates a cleft deep enough to hide a coin. The pain doesn't stop. It gets worse. Over the following days, your feet swell inside the tight bindings until they feel like they might explode. The cloth cuts off circulation, turning your toes purple and then black. The broken bones grind against each other with every tiny movement. You develop a fever. You can't eat. You can't sleep. You rock back and forth on your bed, whimpering, while your mother tries to comfort you with stories about how beautiful you'll be when this is over. How much your future husband will appreciate your tiny feet. How lucky you are to be born into a family that can afford to make you into a proper lady. The smell is what no one tells you about. As your toes begin to rot inside the bindings, your feet develop an odor that's part infection, part decay, part something indescribable. Your mother changes the cloth every few days, washing away pus and blood and pieces of flesh that have fallen off. Some of your toes will eventually fall off entirely. This is considered normal, desirable even, since fewer toes mean smaller feet. Your mother carefully removes the dead tissue with a knife heated over a candle flame. You pass out from the pain, which is probably a mercy. The binding continues for months. Every few weeks, your grandmother unwraps your feet, examines the progress, and rewraps them even tighter. She breaks additional bones if they haven't healed in the proper position. She uses wooden splints to force your arch into the correct shape. She treats your feet like she's sculpting clay, except the clay screams. You learn to walk again, sort of. It's more like balancing on 2 broken stumps while trying not to fall over. Each step sends shockwaves of pain up your legs. You can only move a few feet at a time before you need to rest. Going up or down stairs becomes a major expedition that requires planning and assistance. Your world shrinks accordingly. The compound that once felt small now feels enormous. The distance from your bedroom to the kitchen might as well be a mountain range. You spend more and more time sitting still, not because you want to, but because movement is simply too painful to sustain for long. But here's the thing everyone tells you. Your feet are beautiful now. Tiny, curved, delicate. When you wear the special shoes made for bound feet, pointed silk slippers that look like flower buds, you have the most desirable feature a woman can possess. Men will write poems about your lotus feet. They'll compete for the privilege of marrying you. Of course, you can't actually show your feet to anyone. Bound feet are simultaneously the most important aspect of your beauty and something that must remain completely hidden. You wear thick socks and special shoes that disguise the true shape of your feet. The beauty that was created through months of agony must remain secret, appreciated only by your future husband in the privacy of your marriage chamber. The irony is devastating. You've endured unimaginable pain to create something beautiful that no one can see, to attract a husband who will value you primarily for a feature that must remain hidden, to signal your status as a lady too delicate to work, while simultaneously making it impossible for you to work even if you wanted to. And this is just the beginning. You're maybe 6 years old now, crippled for life, and you still have decades of this ahead of you. Your mother tries to comfort you with stories about other girls who went through the same process and lived to tell about it. She points to the older women in the compound, shuffling slowly across the courtyard on their tiny feet as examples of successful foot binding. Look how elegant they are. Look how gracefully they move. Look how their husbands treasure them. What she doesn't mention is how many girls don't survive the process. Infection claims some. Others develop gangrene that spreads up their legs. Some simply die from the shock and fever. The mortality rate for foot binding is something no one talks about, but everyone knows. You're one of the lucky ones. You survive. Your feet heal into the desired shape. You learn to walk on what are essentially broken stumps wrapped in silk. You develop the swaying, unsteady gait that men find so appealing because it makes you look helpless and dependent. The shoes you wear are works of art. Tiny silk slippers embroidered with flowers, birds, and butterflies. They cost more than a farmer's family earns in a month. They're completely impractical for walking, but perfect for signaling that you're too valuable to walk anywhere important. Your bound feet become the center of an entire culture of fetishization. Men write poems comparing them to lotus buds, to spring onions, to new moons. They compete to see who can compose the most elaborate metaphors for something they've never actually seen and wouldn't be allowed to touch even if they were married to you. The eroticism of bound feet is something you're supposed to understand without it ever being explained to you. Your tiny feet are somehow simultaneously innocent and sexual, pure and provocative. They're the most important thing about you, and you're not supposed to think about them as sexual objects. It's a contradiction that defines much of your existence as a woman in Imperial China. Meanwhile, your brothers are learning to read. They're studying for examinations. They're preparing for careers in government, trade, or scholarship. They're developing skills that will allow them to support families, influence society, and leave their mark on history. You're learning to embroider flowers and walk without falling over. The educational divide between you and your brothers becomes more apparent as you get older. They discuss philosophy, debate politics, and analyze literature. You listen from the women's quarters, understanding perhaps half of what they're talking about, forbidden from joining the conversation, even when you have opinions or insights that might contribute to the discussion. Your intelligence, such as it's allowed to develop, is channeled into domestic management. You learn to calculate household expenses, manage servants, plan meals, and coordinate the complex logistics of running a large family compound. These are actually sophisticated skills that require mathematical ability, organizational talent, and diplomatic finesse. But they're not considered education. They're just women's work. The distinction is important because education is what separates people from property. Your brothers are being educated. You're being trained. They're developing their minds. You're developing your ability to serve others. They're preparing to shape the world. You're preparing to disappear into it. Script continues. Type continue or just hit enter. The gap between you and your brothers widens every day like a crack in a wall that's slowly bringing down the entire house. While they're memorizing classical poetry and practicing their calligraphy for the imperial examinations, you're learning the 17 different ways to fold a napkin so it doesn't offend your future mother-in-law. While they debate philosophy and discuss current events, you're practicing how to serve tea without making any sound when you set the cup down. Your brothers don't even see you anymore. You've become part of the furniture, like a decorative screen that occasionally needs to be moved out of the way. They walk past you without acknowledgement, discuss family business as if you're not in the room, and treat you with the casual indifference usually reserved for household objects. You're not a person to them. You're a future expense that will hopefully pay for itself through marriage. The worst part is that you can follow their conversations perfectly. You understand the political discussions, the literary references, the mathematical concepts they're exploring. Your mind is just as capable as theirs, but your thoughts don't matter because thoughts don't increase your bride price. Intelligence in a woman is like having a third arm. Interesting, but ultimately useless and possibly disturbing to potential husbands. Your formal education consists of memorizing moral exemplars. Stories of women who chose death over dishonor, wives who remained faithful to husbands who abandoned them, daughters who sold themselves into slavery to pay their father's debts. These tales are presented as inspiration, but they read more like instruction manuals for self-destruction. The message is always the same. A good woman erases herself completely in service to others. There's Lady Meng, who wept so hard for her dead husband that she brought down a section of the Great Wall with her tears. There's the woman who cut flesh from her arm to make medicine for her sick mother-in-law. And your personal favorite, the widow who threw herself into her husband's funeral pyre rather than face the shame of remarrying. These women are held up as paragons of virtue, which tells you everything you need to know about what virtue means when you're female. The educational materials themselves are works of art, beautifully illustrated books with stories written in elegant calligraphy, bound in silk covers embroidered with flowers and birds. The irony is that these gorgeous books contain some of the most depressing content ever committed to paper. It's like wrapping poison in gold leaf. You're also taught practical skills, but even these come with layers of restriction and symbolism that turn simple tasks into elaborate rituals. Cooking isn't just about preparing food. It's about demonstrating your ability to nourish others while denying yourself. You learn to taste everything to ensure it's properly seasoned, but you're expected to eat last and least at every meal. Sewing becomes a meditation on patience and self-denial. You spend hours creating beautiful clothes for other family members while wearing simple, worn garments yourself. Your skill with a needle is measured not just by the quality of your work, but by your willingness to sacrifice your eyesight and finger dexterity for the comfort of others. The hierarchy among women in the compound is like a ladder where everyone spends their time kicking down at whoever's below them instead of climbing up. Your grandmother rules with absolute authority, dispensing criticism and punishment with the efficiency of someone who's had decades of practice. Your mother occupies the middle position, grateful not to be at the bottom, but painfully aware that she'll never reach the top. The unmarried aunts are the most tragic figures in this domestic drama. Too old to marry well, too poor to live independently, they exist in a state of permanent shame disguised as usefulness. They help with household tasks, care for children, and absorb criticism from everyone above them in the hierarchy. They're living examples of what happens to women who fail to fulfill their primary purpose of marriage and motherhood. The servants represent the bottom of the female food chain, women from families so poor they had to sell their daughters into domestic service. They do the heavy work that the family women are too delicate to perform, but they're also the convenient targets for everyone's frustration and anger. When your grandmother is having a bad day, she takes it out on the servants. When your mother is stressed, she finds fault with the servants. When you're feeling powerless, well, you're not allowed to take it out on anyone because you're still essentially a child. But even among the servants, there's hierarchy. The older women who've been with the family for years have a certain status. They know all the family secrets, understand the personalities and preferences of each family member, and can navigate the complex social dynamics with the skill of diplomats. The younger servants, especially the pretty ones, occupy a more precarious position. They're vulnerable to unwanted attention from the men of the family, but they're also resented by the women for that same attractiveness. Your daily schedule is determined entirely by other people's needs and preferences. You wake when the household wakes, eat when food is served, sleep when the family goes to bed. The concept of personal time doesn't exist. Every moment of your day belongs to someone else, whether it's your grandmother giving you lessons in deportment, your mother teaching you domestic skills, or the general expectation that you'll be available to help with whatever needs doing. The meals are exercises in self-denial, disguised as family bonding. Everyone gathers in the main hall, seated according to strict hierarchy. Your father and brothers sit at the head of the table, served first and given the best portions. Your grandmother sits nearby, presiding over the meal like a general reviewing troops. Your mother and the other women sit to one side, eating smaller portions of less desirable food. You and any other young girls sit at the very end, grateful for whatever's left after everyone else has been satisfied. The food itself reflects the family's economic status and social aspirations. Rice is the foundation of every meal, but the quality varies dramatically. The men get white rice, polished and refined. The women get brown rice mixed with cheaper grains. The servants get rice mixed with whatever vegetables are about to spoil. You learn to be grateful for anything that isn't actively rotting. Meat is a luxury reserved for special occasions and male family members. When a chicken is slaughtered, your father and brothers get the choice pieces. The women get whatever's left, which usually means bones with tiny scraps of meat attached. You become expert at extracting every possible bit of nutrition from a chicken neck or a fish head. Waste is not just discouraged, it's practically a sin. The tea ceremony becomes another arena for demonstrating your worthiness as a future wife. The preparation, serving, and cleaning up after tea involves dozens of precise movements and rituals that must be performed exactly right. The water must be heated to the correct temperature. The leaves must be measured precisely. The pot must be warmed in a specific sequence. The cups must be presented at the proper angle. One mistake and you start over from the beginning. Your hands develop permanent stains from the tea, small burns from the hot water, and calluses from gripping the delicate porcelain handles. Your back aches from the constant bowing and kneeling required by the ceremony. But these physical discomforts are considered proof of your dedication and refinement. A proper lady bears pain without complaint, especially when that pain results from serving others. The constant criticism becomes the soundtrack to your life. Everything you do is wrong, or could be done better, or demonstrates some fundamental flaw in your character. Your posture is too relaxed. Your voice is too loud. Your stitches are too loose. Your tea is too weak. Your rice is too soft. Your walking is too fast. Your breathing is too obvious. You exist in a state of permanent failure, always falling short of impossible standards. This criticism isn't meant to be cruel, though it certainly feels that way. It's meant to prepare you for marriage, where criticism from your new family will be even more intense and consequential. Your grandmother and mother are trying to toughen you up, to teach you to absorb verbal abuse without reacting, to maintain your composure under constant scrutiny. They're preparing you for a lifetime of being judged and found wanting. The isolation from the outside world becomes more complete as you get older. When you were very young, you might occasionally be taken to visit female relatives or accompany your mother to religious ceremonies. But as you approach marriageable age, these excursions become rarer and more restricted. The reasoning is that exposure to the outside world might give you dangerous ideas about independence or fill your head with inappropriate desires. Your knowledge of current events comes entirely through second-hand reports from the men in your family. You hear fragments of conversations about wars, famines, political changes, economic troubles, but always filtered through their perspectives and priorities. You're not supposed to have opinions about these matters anyway, so your ignorance is considered appropriate rather than problematic. The compound walls that once seemed like protection now feel like prison barriers. You can hear life happening beyond those walls, merchants calling their wares, children playing, festivals and celebrations, but you might as well be hearing sounds from another planet. That world exists, but it's not for you. Your world is measured in footsteps from your bedroom to the kitchen, from the kitchen to the courtyard, from the courtyard back to your bedroom. The seasonal festivals that break up the monotony of daily life are simultaneously wonderful and torturous. Wonderful because they bring variety, special foods, beautiful decorations, and a break from the usual routine. Torturous because they're reminders of all the celebrations happening outside your walls that you'll never experience. The New Year Festival, the Mid-Autumn Festival, the Dragon Boat Festival, you participate in pale, domestic versions of celebrations that are wild and joyful in the streets beyond your compound. Your role in these festivals is always the same: preparation and service. You help make the special foods, clean and decorate the compound, prepare the ancestral offerings, and then serve everyone else while they celebrate. You get to taste the festival foods, but only after everyone else has eaten their fill. You get to see the decorations, but only while you're hanging them up or taking them down. You participate in the festivals the way a stagehand participates in a play. The ancestral worship ceremonies are particularly elaborate affairs that demonstrate the family's piety and social status. The ancestral tablets must be cleaned and polished. Offerings of food, wine, and incense must be prepared according to ancient traditions. Everyone must dress in their finest clothes and perform the ritual kowtows with perfect precision. Your role is to help prepare everything and then stand silently in the background while the men conduct the actual ceremony. These ceremonies are supposed to connect you with your family's history and give you a sense of belonging to something larger than yourself. But what they actually demonstrate is how completely your identity will be erased. The ancestral tablets honor the family's sons, fathers, and grandfathers. The women are mentioned only in relation to the men they served: so-and-so's wife, so-and-so's mother. Their individual names, accomplishments, and personalities have vanished into the generic category of virtuous woman who fulfilled her duties. Looking at those tablets, you can see your own future. Someday, if you're very lucky, you might be remembered as someone's wife and someone's mother. Your own name, your own thoughts, your own dreams will disappear as completely as if they never existed. The best you can hope for is to be remembered as having been appropriately invisible. The marriage negotiations that will determine your fate are happening around you, but not with you. Your father and grandmother discuss potential matches the way farmers might discuss selling livestock. They consider the prospective groom's family wealth, social status, and reputation. They calculate what dowry will be required and whether the alliance will benefit your family's interests. Your preferences, compatibility, and happiness are not part of these calculations. You're not allowed to see potential suitors, meet them, or express any opinion about them. Marriage is a business transaction between families, and your personal feelings are irrelevant to the deal. The best you can hope for is that your family will choose someone who won't beat you too severely, and whose family won't work you to death too quickly. The dowry preparations begin years before your actual marriage, but they accelerate as potential matches are identified. Your family must provide not just money and goods, but also demonstrate your skills and refinement. The embroidery you've been practicing, the tea ceremonies you've perfected, the household management skills you've developed, all of these will be evaluated by your prospective in-laws as part of the marriage negotiations. Your trousseau becomes a showcase of your family's wealth and your own accomplishments. Dozens of outfits for different occasions, household linens embroidered with your new family symbols, jewelry appropriate to your new status, and all the tools and materials you'll need to continue your domestic work in your new home. The preparation of this trousseau takes months and represents a significant financial investment by your family. But here's the cruel irony. The more elaborate your trousseau, the higher the expectations will be in your new home. A wealthy dowry doesn't buy you comfort or respect. It buys you the obligation to live up to the investment your family has made in you. You'll be expected to justify every expensive item, every piece of jewelry, every bolt of silk through your perfect behavior and endless service. The foot binding that crippled you as a child now becomes the centerpiece of your marriageability. Your tiny, deformed feet are examined and evaluated like prize livestock. Potential mothers-in-law want to know exactly how small your feet are, whether the binding was done properly, whether you can still walk well enough to fulfill your duties. Your worth as a potential wife is literally measured in inches. The shoes you wear become increasingly elaborate as marriage negotiations intensify. Tiny silk slippers embroidered with gold thread, decorated with pearls and precious stones, designed to showcase the delicacy and expense of your bound feet. These shoes cost more than most families earn in a year, but they're considered essential investments in your marketability. Your bound feet also determine how you'll spend the rest of your life. The severe mobility restrictions mean you'll be essentially housebound after marriage. You won't be able to visit friends, attend public events, or travel any significant distance. Your world will shrink to the confines of your husband's family compound, and you'll spend decades shuffling slowly from room to room on feet that never stop hurting. The pain management becomes a constant concern. Your feet hurt every moment of every day, but you're expected to hide this discomfort behind a serene expression. Complaining about pain is considered unladylike and suggests that you're not tough enough for the rigors of married life. You learn to walk, sit, and even sleep in ways that minimize the agony, but there's no position that makes it go away entirely. The special care required for bound feet adds another layer of daily maintenance to your routine. The bindings must be changed regularly to prevent infection. The feet must be washed carefully to remove dead skin and pus. Special powders and ointments must be applied to prevent fungal infections. The process is disgusting, painful, and time-consuming, but it's absolutely necessary to prevent your feet from rotting off entirely. Your mobility restrictions also affect your ability to escape dangerous situations. If there's a fire, flood, or other emergency, you can't run. If you're being attacked or threatened, you can't flee. Your bound feet make you completely dependent on others for protection and assistance, which is exactly what they're designed to do. You're literally hobbled like a valuable animal that must be prevented from wandering away. The psychological effects of foot binding extend far beyond the physical limitations. The process teaches you from childhood that your body exists to be shaped by others according to their preferences. Your pain doesn't matter. Your mobility doesn't matter. Your comfort doesn't matter. What matters is creating an appearance that pleases men, regardless of the cost to your health and independence. The beauty standards that justify this mutilation are arbitrary and changeable, but the damage is permanent. Fashion might shift, preferences might evolve, but your broken bones will never heal properly. You've been permanently disabled in service to an aesthetic ideal that might be completely different by the time your own daughters are born. And speaking of daughters, the prospect of inflicting this same torture on your own future children becomes another source of anxiety. You'll be expected to oversee the foot binding of your daughters, to hold them down while their bones are broken, to ignore their screams and pleas for mercy. The cycle of abuse will continue through you, making you both victim and perpetrator of this systematic cruelty. The social pressure to conform is overwhelming. Families that don't bind their daughters' feet are considered backward, poor, or foreign. Girls with natural feet are virtually unmarriageable in polite society. They might find husbands among farmers or laborers, but they'll never be considered suitable wives for merchants, scholars, or officials. The choice is between temporary agony and permanent social exile. The medical complications from foot binding extend far beyond the feet themselves. The altered gait puts stress on your knees, hips, and spine. Many women develop chronic back pain, arthritis, and other musculoskeletal problems. The restricted mobility leads to poor cardiovascular health and muscle weakness. You're more prone to falls and injuries because your balance is compromised, and you can't move quickly enough to catch yourself. Pregnancy and childbirth become even more dangerous when your pelvis has been affected by years of abnormal walking patterns. The restricted mobility makes it difficult to get proper exercise during pregnancy, and the altered posture can complicate delivery. Many women with bound feet die in childbirth, not from direct complications of the foot binding, but from the cascade of health problems it creates. The economic implications of foot binding are complex and contradictory. On one hand, tiny feet signal that your family is wealthy enough to support a daughter who can't work. On the other hand, your inability to work makes you a permanent financial burden. You can't contribute to the family income through farming, crafts, or trade. You're purely a consumer, an expense that must be offset by your value in marriage negotiations. This economic dependence extends throughout your entire life. You'll never be able to support yourself if your husband dies, abandons you, or falls into poverty. You'll never be able to flee an abusive marriage or make independent decisions about your future. You're economically trapped by your own feet, forced to accept whatever treatment you receive because you have no alternatives. The foot binding also creates a strange intimacy between mothers and daughters. Your mother is the one who breaks your bones, but she's also the one who tends to your wounds, changes your bandages, and comforts you through the worst pain. She's simultaneously your torturer and your caregiver, inflicting damage and then nursing you through the consequences. This complicated relationship shapes your understanding of love, care, and family obligation. The secrecy surrounding bound feet creates another layer of psychological complexity. These feet that define your worth must remain completely hidden from view. Even your future husband won't see them until your wedding night, and then only in the private darkness of your marriage chamber. You spend your life defined by something that exists in shadow, valuable precisely because it's concealed. The shoes designed for bound feet are works of art that serve as proxies for the hidden reality beneath them. Elaborate embroidery, precious materials, and exquisite craftsmanship create beautiful objects that hint at the supposed beauty they conceal. These shoes become fetish objects, more important in some ways than the actual feet they cover. The walking technique required for bound feet becomes its own form of performance art. The small, shuffling steps, the swaying gait, the need for support when navigating stairs or uneven ground, all of these limitations are reframed as graceful, elegant, and feminine. Your disability is transformed into a dance, your pain into poetry, your restriction into refinement. The cultural mythology surrounding foot binding creates elaborate justifications for the practice. Stories about lotus flowers, golden lily, and celestial beauty transform brutal mutilation into romantic metaphor. The language used to describe bound feet is so flowery and euphemistic that it obscures the reality of broken bones, rotting flesh, and lifelong disability. But underneath all the poetry and symbolism, the practical reality remains unchanged. You're crippled. You're in constant pain. You're completely dependent on others for mobility, safety, and survival. And everyone pretends this is not only normal, but desirable. The intersection of foot binding with sexual desire creates another layer of complexity that you're not supposed to understand, but can't avoid sensing. The tiny shoes, the hidden feet, the helpless gait, all of these elements contribute to an erotic mystique that reduces you to a collection of fetishized body parts. Your sexuality is simultaneously essential to your value and completely removed from your control. Men write poems about bound feet they've never seen, compose elaborate fantasies about their delicacy and beauty, and compete to marry women with the smallest feet. But this desire is entirely abstract, focused on the idea of bound feet rather than the reality. The actual experience of living with broken bones and constant pain is irrelevant to their romantic fantasies. The maintenance of this illusion requires constant effort. You must appear graceful while struggling with every step. You must seem delicate while enduring chronic agony. You must embody feminine perfection while your body falls apart from the inside out. The performance never ends, and the audience never realizes they're watching someone slowly dying from the pursuit of their aesthetic ideals. Your adolescence becomes a countdown to marriage, marked by increasingly elaborate preparations and restrictions. Every skill you learn, every accomplishment you achieve, every aspect of your appearance and behavior is evaluated for its potential contribution to your marriageability. You're not developing into an individual person. You're being refined into a product for sale in the marriage market. The other girls in your extended family and social circle become both companions and competitors in this process. You're all facing the same fate, but your relative success or failure in attracting good marriages creates tension and rivalry, even among cousins and close friends. Everyone wants to be supportive, but everyone also wants to secure the best possible match for themselves or their daughters. The gossip networks among the women become crucial sources of information about potential marriages, family reputations, and social developments that might affect your prospects. Since you're not allowed direct access to information about the world beyond your compound, you depend on these whispered conversations to understand the forces shaping your future. The waiting becomes almost unbearable as you approach the optimal marriage age. Every day without a proposal feels like a step closer to spinsterhood and social disgrace. Every rumor about potential suitors creates hope followed by disappointment. Every comparison to other girls your age becomes a source of anxiety about your relative desirability. Your body changes during adolescence, but these changes are viewed entirely through the lens of marriageability rather than personal development. The onset of menstruation is significant only because it signals your reproductive potential. The development of your figure matters only insofar as it contributes to your attractiveness to potential husbands. The emotional and psychological aspects of adolescence are largely ignored or suppressed. You're not supposed to have personal desires, romantic fantasies, or individual preferences about your future. Your feelings are irrelevant to the practical business of arranging your marriage, and expressing them would be considered inappropriate and potentially damaging to your reputation. The education you received as a child becomes increasingly irrelevant as marriage approaches. The poetry you memorized, the historical examples you studied, the moral principles you learned, None of these will matter once you become someone's wife and daughter-in-law. Your intellectual development stops at the altar, replaced by the practical demands of domestic service. The skills that do matter are the ones that will make you useful in your new household. Cooking, cleaning, sewing, managing servants, caring for children, and maintaining harmonious relationships with difficult in-laws. These are the abilities that will determine your success or failure as a wife, and they're the ones your family focuses on perfecting as your marriage approaches. Your personality must also be adjusted to meet the expectations of married life. Independence, curiosity, assertiveness, and creativity are all considered dangerous traits that might cause problems in your new family. You're encouraged to become more passive, more agreeable, more willing to accept criticism and direction without question. The transformation is gradual, but relentless. The girl who once had opinions, preferences, and dreams slowly disappears, replaced by a carefully constructed persona designed to please others. By the time your marriage is arranged, you've become so thoroughly trained in self-suppression that you've almost forgotten who you might have been under different circumstances. The final months before marriage are filled with intensive preparation designed to ensure your success in your new role. Crash courses in your future family's preferences, customs, and expectations. Practice sessions in managing increasingly complex household scenarios. Final refinements to your appearance, manners, and domestic skills. But perhaps most importantly, these final months are when you're taught to let go of any remaining attachment to your birth family and childhood identity. You're about to become someone completely different, and clinging to who you used to be will only make the transition more painful for everyone involved. The marriage ceremony itself will mark the official end of your childhood and the beginning of your adult life as a wife and eventually mother. But long before that ceremony takes place, the girl you once were has already been systematically erased, replaced by a product of careful training designed to serve others rather than live for herself. And this is still just the beginning of your story. The marriage negotiations begin in earnest around your 14th birthday, though you won't know about most of them until they're nearly concluded. Your father and grandmother spend long afternoons in hushed conversations with visiting relatives and family friends, discussing your prospects with the clinical efficiency of livestock traders evaluating breeding stock. You catch fragments of these discussions from the women's quarters, where you're supposed to be practicing your embroidery, but are actually straining to overhear news about your own future. The criteria for evaluating potential husbands would be amusing if they weren't so depressing. Wealth comes first, obviously, because your family needs to recoup their investment in your upbringing and dowry. Social status runs a close second, because marrying above your station brings honor to your birth family, while marrying beneath, it brings shame that lasts for generations. The prospective groom's character, personality, and treatment of women don't factor into the calculations at all. Your father consults fortune tellers to ensure that your birth year, month, day, and hour are compatible with potential suitors. The cosmic alignment of your marriage is apparently more important than whether you'll be beaten daily or treated with basic human decency. These consultations cost money your family can barely afford, but the shame of an inauspicious match would cost even more in terms of social standing. The matchmakers who facilitate these negotiations are professional gossips with encyclopedic knowledge of every family's financial situation, reputation, and dirty secrets. They know which merchants are secretly in debt, which officials have been taking bribes, and which families have histories of producing daughters who die in childbirth or sons who turn out to be gamblers and wastrels. This information is their stock in trade, and they use it to broker deals that benefit their own interests as much as their clients. Your grandmother takes charge of marketing your assets to potential in-laws. She prepares detailed inventories of your skills, accomplishments, and physical attributes that read like auction catalogs. Your embroidery stitches per inch, your tea-serving technique, the precise measurements of your bound feet, your complexion quality, and your fertility prospects based on your mother's reproductive history. You're reduced to a collection of marketable features, each one assigned a value that contributes to your overall bride price. The dowry negotiations are where your family's financial situation becomes painfully apparent. Your father borrowed money to pay for your foot binding, your clothes, your education and domestic skills, and all the preparations that have led to this moment. Now he must borrow even more to provide a dowry substantial enough to attract a decent husband. The interest on these loans will follow your family for years, creating pressure to marry you off quickly before the debt becomes unsustainable. Your dowry includes not just money and goods, but also promises about your future behavior and productivity. Your family guarantees that you'll be obedient, hardworking, and fertile. They promise that you won't cause trouble, complain about your treatment, or attempt to maintain inappropriate contact with your birth family after marriage. You're essentially being sold with a warranty that covers your performance as a wife and daughter-in-law. The inspection process that determines your acceptability to potential in-laws is humiliating beyond description. You're paraded before prospective mothers-in-law like a prize horse at auction, expected to demonstrate your skills while maintaining perfect composure under intense scrutiny. You serve tea with trembling hands, while strange women examine your posture, criticize your technique, and discuss your flaws as if you're not in the room. Your bound feet receive special attention during these inspections. Potential mothers-in-law want to see your shoes, examine your gait, and sometimes even touch your feet through the silk to assess their shape and size. The smaller your feet, the higher your value, but they also need to verify that the binding was done properly and hasn't resulted in infection or deformity that might interfere with your ability to fulfill your duties. The questions they ask about your health focus entirely on your reproductive potential. Have you begun menstruating regularly? Do you show signs of fertility problems that run in your family? Are your hips wide enough for childbearing? Have you ever been sick with fevers that might affect your ability to conceive? Your medical history is relevant only insofar as it impacts your ability to produce male heirs. Your personality is evaluated for its potential to cause problems in your new household. Signs of intelligence, curiosity, or independent thinking are considered dangerous red flags that might lead to future conflicts. Potential in-laws prefer daughters-in-law who are sweet, passive, and slightly dim. Smart women ask inconvenient questions and might develop opinions about how they're being treated. The negotiation process can drag on for months, with offers and counteroffers flying back and forth while you remain in limbo. Each rejected proposal feels like a personal failure, even though you have no control over the outcome. Your family's growing desperation becomes palpable as they lower their standards and increase their financial offers to attract any acceptable husband. Meanwhile, your daily routine continues unchanged except for the added pressure of maintaining your appearance and skills at peak levels in case another inspection is scheduled. You can't let your embroidery slip or gain weight or develop any blemishes that might affect your marketability. The stress of constant evaluation takes its toll on your sleep, appetite, and general health. But complaining about these problems would only make you seem weak and unsuitable. The other unmarried girls in your extended social circle become sources of both support and anxiety. You share the common experience of waiting to learn your fate, but you're also competing for the same limited pool of acceptable husbands. When one of your cousins receives a good marriage proposal, you're expected to celebrate her success while privately wondering why your own family can't secure similar offers. The gossip about failed marriages and unhappy wives creates a constant undercurrent of fear about what awaits you. Stories circulate about girls who were beaten to death by abusive husbands, daughters-in-law who were worked to death by demanding mothers-in-law, and women who died in childbirth because their families couldn't afford proper medical care. These cautionary tales are supposedly meant to prepare you for potential hardships, but they mostly serve to increase your anxiety about an already terrifying prospect. Your education in wifely duties intensifies as marriage negotiations progress. You receive detailed instruction in managing household finances, supervising servants, planning elaborate meals, and maintaining harmonious relationships with difficult relatives. These lessons assume that you'll be joining a family that's wealthy enough to require these skills, but they also prepare you for the complex social dynamics that govern upper-class households. The sexual education you receive is minimal and euphemistic, consisting mainly of vague warnings about your duty to submit to your husband's desires without question or complaint. The physical mechanics of sex and pregnancy are never explicitly discussed, leaving you to piece together information from whispered conversations and half-understood references. This ignorance is considered appropriate for unmarried girls, but it leaves you completely unprepared for the realities of married life. Your emotional preparation for leaving your birth family is equally inadequate. You're told that you'll be happier in your new home, that your in-laws will love you like a daughter, and that you'll quickly adapt to your new circumstances. But the older women in your family can't quite hide their sadness when they look at you, and their attempts at reassurance sound hollow and forced. The legal aspects of marriage negotiations involve contracts that treat you as property being transferred from one family to another. Your father has the right to cancel agreements if better offers emerge, and your prospective in-laws can withdraw their proposals if they discover information that affects your value. You have no legal standing in these negotiations, and no recourse if the agreements reached are not honored. The timeline for completing marriage arrangements creates artificial urgency that benefits everyone except you. Your family wants to conclude negotiations quickly to reduce their financial burden and social anxiety. Your prospective in-laws want to secure a daughter-in-law before other families can outbid them. The matchmakers want to collect their fees and move on to other clients. Nobody has any incentive to take time to ensure that the match will actually result in a tolerable life for you. The final stages of marriage negotiations involve increasingly detailed discussions of expectations, obligations, and consequences that will govern your future behavior. Your new family wants guarantees that you'll work hard, cause no trouble, and produce children quickly. Your birth family wants assurances that you'll be treated reasonably well and won't bring shame on them through your conduct or circumstances. And then, suddenly, it's settled. Your father announces that arrangements have been finalized with a family you've never met, from marriage to a man you've never seen. The wedding will take place in 3 months, giving both families time to complete preparations and fulfill their obligations under the marriage contract. You're expected to receive this news with gratitude and excitement, but mostly you feel numb terror about the approaching end of everything familiar. The engagement period brings a flurry of activity as both families prepare for the wedding ceremony and your transition to married life. Your trousseau must be completed, your dowry assembled, and your education in your new family's customs intensified. Every day brings reminders that your childhood is ending and your adult life as someone else's property is about to begin. Your future husband remains an abstraction throughout this process. You might catch glimpses of him at family gatherings or public events, but you're not allowed to speak to him or form any personal relationship before marriage. He's described to you in terms of his family's wealth and status rather than his individual characteristics, leaving you to wonder whether he's kind, cruel, intelligent, or violent. These personal qualities will determine your daily happiness for the rest of your life, but they're considered irrelevant to the marriage arrangements. The gifts exchanged between families during the engagement period reinforce the transactional nature of your marriage. Your family receives money, goods, and promises of future support. Your future in-laws receive guarantees about your behavior, productivity, and fertility. You personally receive jewelry and clothing that mark you as belonging to your new family. But these gifts come with obligations that far outweigh their monetary value. Your relationships with your birth family begin to change as your wedding approaches. You're encouraged to become less attached to your parents and siblings, since excessive loyalty to your original family might interfere with your duties to your new one. The emotional distance that develops during this period serves as practice for the complete separation that marriage will bring. The wedding preparations reveal just how expensive your marriage will be for both families involved. Your father goes deeper into debt to pay for the ceremony, the banquet, and the elaborate gifts required by tradition. Your future in-laws spend equally large sums on their own preparations and gifts. The financial pressure on everyone involved creates tension that affects the entire extended family. Your wedding dress is a work of art that costs more than your family's annual income. Layers of silk embroidered with gold thread, decorated with pearls and precious stones, designed to showcase your value and your new family's wealth. The dress is so elaborate and expensive that you'll only wear it once, but it serves as a public statement about the importance and success of the marriage alliance. The ceremony itself will be an elaborate public performance designed to demonstrate both families' social status and cultural sophistication. Hundreds of guests, multiple courses of expensive food, professional entertainers, and rituals that have been practiced for centuries. Your role in this spectacle is essentially decorative. You're the centerpiece of the celebration. That's really about everyone else's interests and relationships. But even as the wedding preparations reach their climax, the reality of what comes after the ceremony looms larger. The celebration will last for 3 days. Your new life as someone's wife and daughter-in-law will last for decades. And despite all the planning, negotiating, and preparing, nobody has given much thought to whether you'll survive it with your sanity intact. The final weeks before your wedding are filled with increasingly desperate attempts by your female relatives to prepare you for married life. They share fragments of practical advice mixed with warnings about potential dangers and problems you might encounter. But their guidance is limited by their own experiences of submission and suffering, and they can't teach you strategies for happiness or fulfillment that they've never learned themselves. Your mother becomes especially emotional as your wedding approaches, torn between pride in your successful marriage and grief at losing you to another family. She tries to give you advice about managing difficult in-laws and demanding husbands, but her suggestions mostly involve various forms of self-denial and strategic invisibility. She's teaching you how to survive, not how to thrive, because survival is the best outcome she can imagine for you. The other women in your extended family share their own marriage stories during these final weeks, ostensibly to prepare you for what lies ahead. These accounts are uniformly depressing tales of abuse, overwork, and gradual surrender of any hope for personal happiness. They're presented as normal experiences that all women must endure, but they sound more like descriptions of prolonged torture disguised as domestic life. Your physical preparation for marriage includes final adjustments to your appearance and dress. Your hair is styled in increasingly elaborate arrangements that signal your transition from girlhood to womanhood. Your skin is treated with expensive cosmetics and whitening agents that will make you look appropriately pale and refined. Your nails are shaped and painted, your eyebrows plucked into fashionable arches, your lips colored with rouge made from toxic minerals. The medical preparation for marriage is limited to ensuring that you're physically capable of sexual activity and childbearing. A physician examines you to verify that you're intact and healthy, treating you like livestock being inspected before sale. Any problems discovered during this examination could result in cancellation of the marriage contract, leaving your family in financial ruin and social disgrace. Your emotional state during these final preparations is largely ignored by everyone involved. You're expected to be nervous but excited, grateful for the opportunity to fulfill your destiny as a wife and mother. Signs of genuine terror or depression are dismissed as pre-wedding jitters that will disappear once you settle into your new role. Nobody considers the possibility that you might be grieving the loss of your individual identity or mourning the end of your childhood. The countdown to your wedding day feels like a countdown to your own execution. Each passing day brings you closer to leaving everything familiar and entering a completely unknown situation, where your survival will depend on the kindness of strangers who have already demonstrated their willingness to treat you as property. You go through the motions of preparation and celebration, while privately wondering if you'll live long enough to see your next birthday. The night before your wedding, you lie awake in your childhood bed for the last time, trying to memorize the familiar sounds and smells of your birth family's compound. Tomorrow you'll wake up in a strange house, surrounded by people who view you as an investment that must pay dividends through your labor and fertility. Tonight is your last opportunity to be yourself, whoever that person might have been under different circumstances. Your wedding day dawns gray and cold, which the superstitious older women in your family interpret as either a good omen or a terrible one, depending on which traditional sayings they choose to remember. You're awakened before sunrise to begin the lengthy process of preparing for the ceremony, a ritual transformation that will take most of the morning and involve dozens of people working on various aspects of your appearance. The dressing process feels like being prepared for sacrifice rather than celebration. Layer upon layer of silk and brocade, each piece heavier than the last, until you can barely move under the weight of your own clothing. The elaborate headdress requires multiple people to position correctly, and once it's in place, you can't turn your head without risking the entire structure collapsing. The jewelry is equally cumbersome. Heavy gold necklaces, elaborate earrings, bracelets that cover your arms from wrist to elbow. Your bound feet are fitted into the most elaborate shoes you've ever worn. Tiny silk slippers encrusted with pearls and gold embroidery that cost more than most families earn in a year. The shoes are so ornate and delicate that walking in them is even more difficult than usual, requiring you to take smaller, more careful steps than your already limited mobility normally allows. The makeup application takes hours and involves toxic cosmetics that burn your skin and make your eyes water. The white lead powder that creates your fashionably pale complexion will slowly poison you over the years. But today, it serves its purpose of making you look like a porcelain doll rather than a living, breathing human being. The rouge and kohl are applied with artistic precision, creating a face that's beautiful but completely artificial. Your hair is arranged in a style so elaborate that it requires architectural engineering to maintain. Pins, combs, ornaments, and artificial flowers are woven into structures that add inches to your height and pounds to the weight your neck must support. The entire edifice is held together with pomade made from animal fat and wax, creating a sculpture that smells faintly rancid but looks appropriately magnificent. By the time your transformation is complete, you're barely recognizable as the girl who went to sleep last night. You've become a living work of art, a display piece designed to showcase your family's wealth and your new husband's good fortune in acquiring such an expensive and well-prepared wife. The person you used to be has disappeared beneath layers of silk, cosmetics, and jewelry, which is exactly what's supposed to happen. The wedding ceremony itself is a blur of rituals you've memorized, but don't fully understand. You're led through a series of prescribed actions, bowing to ancestors, exchanging symbolic gifts, reciting vows that promise obedience and submission, while hundreds of guests watch and evaluate your performance. Your role is entirely passive. You're acted upon rather than acting, moved from position to position like a beautifully dressed mannequin. Your new husband appears even more nervous than you are, which is somehow both reassuring and terrifying. He's younger than you expected, but older than you'd hoped, with a soft face that suggests he's never faced any serious hardships, but also lacks the strength to protect you from whatever hardships lie ahead. He stumbles through his part of the ceremony with the mechanical precision of someone who's rehearsed his lines, but doesn't understand their meaning. The banquet following the ceremony is a spectacular display of both families' wealth and social connections. Course after course of elaborate dishes, expensive wines, and exotic delicacies that most of the guests have never tasted before. You sit at the head table in your uncomfortable finery, unable to eat because your corset is too tight and your headdress too heavy, watching other people celebrate a transaction in which you were the primary commodity. The entertainment includes professional musicians, dancers, and storytellers who perform for hours while the guests eat, drink, and conduct business disguised as social conversation. Marriage banquets are important networking opportunities where families cement alliances, arrange future matches for their children, and negotiate deals that have nothing to do with the supposed celebration. You're the excuse for the party, but you're not really the focus of it. The gift-giving ceremony reveals the true nature of your marriage as an economic transaction. Your family presents your dowry with elaborate speeches about your virtues and accomplishments. Your new in-laws accept these gifts with expressions of gratitude that don't quite hide their critical evaluation of each item's quality and value. The guests present gifts that reflect their relationships with both families and their assessments of the marriage's likely success. Your new mother-in-law inspects you throughout the ceremony with the calculating gaze of someone who's just made a major purchase and wants to ensure she's received full value for her investment. She examines your posture, your manners, your responses to various situations, and your physical appearance with the thoroughness of a livestock judge at a county fair. Her approval or disapproval will determine your treatment in your new household. As the day wears on, the reality of your situation begins to penetrate the fog of ritual and celebration. You're no longer part of your birth family. You belong to these strangers now, and your survival depends entirely on their satisfaction with their acquisition. The elaborate ceremony and expensive celebration can't disguise the fundamental fact that you've been sold, and the transaction is now complete. The traditional games and activities that accompany wedding celebrations are designed to demonstrate your new subordinate status within your husband's family. You're expected to serve tea to your new in-laws with perfect grace, while they offer criticism and advice about your technique. You must accept their corrections with gratitude and humility, showing that you understand your place in the household hierarchy. The evening brings increasingly pointed hints about your wedding night duties and expectations for your future fertility. The older women in your new family share stories about successful marriages that produced many sons, while carefully avoiding mention of wives who died in childbirth or failed to conceive. The pressure to prove your worth through immediate pregnancy is made clear through jokes and suggestions that aren't really jokes at all. Your own family begins to fade into the background as the celebration continues. They're guests now rather than hosts, and their influence over your life has officially ended. The emotional distance you've been practicing during your engagement becomes permanent. Separation as you realize that any future contact with your birth family will depend on your new family's permission and approval. The traditional farewell ceremony that marks your departure from your childhood home is heartbreaking in its finality. You prostrate yourself before your parents and grandparents, acknowledging their authority over you for the last time, while thanking them for their care and preparation. They offer formal blessings for your marriage and future, but everyone involved knows this might be the last time you see each other. Your sedan chair, decorated with red silk and gold embroidery, becomes your transportation to your new life and your symbolic coffin for your old one. The journey to your husband's family compound takes only a few hours, but it spans the distance between everything you've ever known and a completely unknown future. As you're carried through the streets, you catch glimpses of the world outside through the sedan chair's windows, realizing that this might be the last time you see the broader world beyond your new family's walls. The arrival at your new home is marked by more rituals designed to establish your position within the household hierarchy. You must bow to your new in-laws in order of their importance, serve them tea with perfect precision, and accept their criticism and advice with appropriate humility. Every gesture and response is evaluated for signs of proper training and suitable attitude. Your new living quarters are smaller and less comfortable than your childhood room, reflecting your status as the newest and lowest-ranking adult in the household. You'll share these cramped spaces with your husband, but privacy is a luxury that married couples don't enjoy in extended family compounds. Everything you do will be observed, evaluated, and reported to your mother-in-law, who will use this information to determine your treatment and privileges. The wedding night itself is a terrifying culmination of months of anxiety and preparation. Your husband, equally inexperienced and nervous, approaches your first sexual encounter with the mechanical efficiency of someone performing a duty rather than expressing affection. The physical pain is considerable, but the emotional trauma of being used by a stranger is worse. This is your introduction to married life, and it sets the tone for everything that follows. Your transformation from daughter to wife is now complete. The girl who woke up this morning in her childhood bed no longer exists. In her place is a married woman whose value will be measured entirely by her ability to produce sons, manage household affairs, and maintain harmonious relationships with in-laws who view her as a useful but potentially troublesome acquisition. Tomorrow will bring your first full day as a wife and daughter-in-law, with all the expectations, obligations, and restrictions that come with these roles. You'll discover what your new family expects from their investment in you, and you'll begin the process of learning to survive in a household where your happiness and well-being are subordinate to everyone else's convenience and preferences. But tonight, lying in an unfamiliar bed next to a stranger who is now legally entitled to use your body however he chooses, you have a few hours to mourn the death of whoever you might have become under different circumstances. Tomorrow, the real work of being a wife begins, and it will continue until pregnancy, disease, or exhaustion finally releases you from your obligations. The marriage ceremony may be over, but your story as a woman in Imperial China is just beginning its cruelest chapter. Your first morning as a wife begins before dawn with the sound of your mother-in-law's voice cutting through the darkness like a rusty blade. She's calling your name, not the name your parents gave you, but your new married name that reflects your status as property of your husband's family. You stumble out of bed, your bound feet screaming in protest after yesterday's long ceremony, and begin the first day of what will become your daily routine for the rest of your life. The hierarchy in your new household becomes immediately apparent as you join the other women for morning prayers and breakfast preparation. Your mother-in-law sits at the apex of female power, dispensing orders and criticism with the casual authority of someone who spent decades perfecting the art of domestic tyranny. Below her are your husband's sisters-in-law, women who've been in the family longer and have earned slightly more respect through years of submission and service. You occupy the bottom rung of this ladder, lower than the servants, because at least they get paid for their labor. As the newest daughter-in-law, you're expected to do the most unpleasant tasks while receiving the harshest criticism and smallest portions of food. The other women in the household aren't necessarily cruel, but they're grateful to finally have someone below them in the pecking order. and they're not about to waste the opportunity to exercise what little power they possess. Your daily schedule is determined entirely by your mother-in-law's preferences and the household's needs. You wake when she decides, eat what she provides, work on tasks she assigns, and rest only when she permits. The concept of personal time or individual preferences doesn't exist in your new reality. Every moment belongs to your husband's family, and they intend to extract maximum value from their investment in you. Breakfast preparation becomes your first lesson in the complex dynamics of your new household. You're responsible for the most labor-intensive tasks: grinding grain, hauling water, stoking fires, scrubbing pots, while the more senior women supervise and criticize your technique. Everything you do is wrong or could be done better, and the constant correction is designed to break down whatever confidence or independence you might still possess. The morning meal itself reinforces the household hierarchy through carefully prescribed seating arrangements and serving protocols. Your father-in-law and husband eat first and receive the best portions. Your mother-in-law and the other senior women eat next, followed by the children, then the servants. You eat last, if there's anything left, standing in the kitchen while you clean up the mess from everyone else's meal. Your husband's attitude toward you is distant and slightly embarrassed, as if he's not quite sure what to do with this expensive acquisition his parents have made on his behalf. He treats you with the polite indifference he might show to a new piece of furniture, useful but not particularly interesting. Your relationship exists primarily to produce children and manage domestic affairs, not to provide companionship or emotional support. The sexual expectations of marriage become a source of constant anxiety as you realize that your primary value lies in your ability to become pregnant quickly and produce sons. Every month that passes without pregnancy is malairs. Your mother-in-law makes pointed comments about other daughters-in-law who became pregnant within their first months of marriage, while carefully avoiding mention of those who failed to conceive or died trying. The pressure to prove your fertility is relentless and begins immediately, turning your most private moments into matters of public concern and family investment. Your husband approaches these intimate encounters with the mechanical efficiency of someone performing a necessary but unpleasant duty. There's no tenderness, no consideration for your comfort or pleasure, just the biological imperative to produce offspring as quickly as possible. You endure these sessions with gritted teeth, understanding that your survival depends on your ability to conceive while simultaneously dreading the dangers that pregnancy will bring. The household work assigned to you is deliberately overwhelming, designed to test your stamina and willingness to accept endless drudgery without complaint. You scrub floors until your knees bleed through your clothes, wash clothes until your hands crack and bleed from the harsh soap, and carry heavy buckets of water despite your bound feet, making every step an exercise in barely controlled agony. The work never ends because there's always something else that needs cleaning, mending, or organizing. Your mother-in-law watches your every move with the calculating gaze of someone evaluating a purchase for defects and weaknesses. She notes when you rest for even a moment, criticizes your technique for tasks you've never been taught, and finds fault with results that would be considered satisfactory if achieved by anyone else. This constant scrutiny is designed to keep you in a state of perpetual anxiety about your performance and acceptability. The other servants in the household treat you with a mixture of sympathy and resentment. They feel sorry for your obvious misery and the impossible standards you're expected to meet, but they also resent that you're technically above them in the family hierarchy despite doing the same work they do. Your position as daughter-in-law gives you theoretical authority over the servants, but your newness and low status make it impossible to exercise any real power. Your isolation from your birth family becomes more complete with each passing day. Letters are forbidden without your mother-in-law's permission. Visits are out of the question, And even casual mentions of your childhood or parents are discouraged as signs of inappropriate loyalty to your former life. You're expected to demonstrate complete devotion to your new family by forgetting that you ever had another one. The financial pressure on your new family becomes apparent as you learn about the debts they incurred to pay for your wedding and the ongoing costs of maintaining their social status. Your dowry helped offset these expenses, but it wasn't enough to eliminate the family's financial anxiety. This economic stress affects everyone's mood and increases the pressure on you to prove your worth through exceptional service and rapid reproduction. Your bound feet, already a source of constant pain, become even more problematic as your workload increases. The elaborate shoes you wore during your wedding have been replaced with simple cloth slippers that offer no support or protection. Your feet swell inside the tight bindings, develop new infections from the constant moisture and friction, and occasionally bleed through the fabric wrappings. But complaining about pain is considered a sign of weakness that might reflect poorly on your upbringing. The medical care available to you is limited and focused entirely on your reproductive capacity. If you develop a fever or infection that might affect your ability to conceive, a physician might be consulted. But ordinary aches, pains, and illnesses are considered part of normal female existence that you should endure without comment or treatment. Your health matters only insofar as it affects your usefulness to your husband's family. The seasonal festivals that once brought joy and variety to your life now become additional sources of work and stress. You're responsible for helping prepare elaborate meals, clean and decorate the house, and manage the complex logistics of entertaining extended family and guests. These celebrations require weeks of preparation and leave you exhausted, but they also provide opportunities for your in-laws to show off their newest acquisition to relatives and friends. Your performance during these festivals is carefully evaluated by the extended family network that will determine your reputation within the broader community. Every gesture, every response to criticism, every demonstration of your domestic skills is noted and discussed by women, who will spread their opinions throughout their own social circles. Your success or failure as a daughter-in-law affects not just your own treatment, but your birth family's reputation and your future sisters-in-law's marriage prospects. The gossip networks that connect the women of your new neighborhood become sources of both information and anxiety. You learn about other daughters-in-law who've succeeded or failed in their new roles, but you also realize that your own behavior is being observed and reported throughout this informal intelligence system. Every mistake you make, every sign of unhappiness or rebellion, becomes fodder for conversations that could affect your family's social standing. Your education in your new family's specific customs and preferences is ongoing and frequently painful. Each family has its own ways of preparing food, organizing household tasks, observing religious rituals, and maintaining social relationships. What you learned in your birth family may be completely wrong in your new household, but you're expected to adapt instantly, without making mistakes that might embarrass your in-laws or suggest that your previous training was inadequate. The religious observances that structure daily life in your new household are more elaborate and demanding than those you grew up with. Your father-in-law takes pride in the family's piety and expects elaborate ceremonies to honor ancestors, celebrate seasonal festivals, and mark important family milestones. Your role in these observances is to provide labor and demonstrate devotion while remaining largely invisible to the male participants. Your relationship with your husband's siblings creates additional complications in your daily life. His brothers view you as a servant who should be available to meet their needs without question. His sisters, if they're still unmarried, resent your presence because it reminds them of their own approaching fate. His married sisters, when they visit, use you as a target for demonstrating their own superior status and knowledge of family customs. The children in the household, whether they belong to your husband's brothers or married sisters become both your responsibility and your critics. You're expected to help care for them, educate them, and manage their behavior, but you have no real authority over them. They quickly learn that they can get away with treating you badly because their parents won't punish them for disrespecting someone who ranks so low in the family hierarchy. Your own childhood experiences become increasingly distant memories that you're discouraged from sharing or even remembering. Your new family isn't interested in your previous life, your opinions, or your preferences. They want you to become a blank slate that can be inscribed with their values, customs, and expectations. The person you used to be is considered an obstacle to your successful integration into their household. The physical deterioration that results from your new lifestyle is rapid and noticeable. The combination of poor nutrition, exhausting work, constant stress, and inadequate sleep takes a toll on your appearance and health. Your skin becomes sallow, your hair loses its shine, and your body grows thin from eating last and least at every meal. But this decline in your appearance is considered normal for married women and doesn't concern anyone, as long as your work capacity isn't affected. Your bound feet continue to cause problems as the demands on your mobility increase. The infections that develop from constant moisture and friction resist treatment and sometimes spread to other parts of your legs. The pain interferes with your sleep and makes it difficult to concentrate on your work, but you're expected to function normally regardless of your physical discomfort. Pain is considered a normal part of being a woman, not a medical condition requiring attention. The emotional toll of your new life manifests in ways that concern your in-laws only when they affect your usefulness. Depression that makes you less productive is a problem that needs correction. Anxiety that interferes with your work requires discipline rather than comfort. Homesickness that makes you mention your birth family is a character flaw that must be eliminated through proper training and firm boundaries. Your sleep is frequently interrupted by your mother-in-law's demands for assistance, with tasks that could easily wait until morning. These nocturnal summons serve multiple purposes. They establish her absolute authority over your time and activities. They test your willingness to serve without complaint, and they ensure that you remain exhausted and compliant. Well-rested women might develop inconvenient ideas about their rights or treatment. The clothing you're allowed to wear reflects your low status within the household hierarchy. Your wedding finery has been carefully stored away for special occasions, replaced by simple, worn garments that mark you as a working member of the family rather than an honored guest. Your everyday clothes are practical but ugly, designed for durability rather than attractiveness. Looking good is less important than looking appropriately humble. Your hair, once elaborately styled and decorated, is now pulled back in a simple bun that stays out of your way while you work. The beautiful ornaments and accessories you received as wedding gifts are reserved for formal occasions when the family wants to display their wealth and good taste. Your daily appearance is deliberately plain, ensuring that you don't attract unwanted attention or develop vanity about your looks. The makeup and cosmetics that once enhanced your beauty are now used sparingly and only for special occasions. The expensive lead powder, rouge, and kohl are too costly for everyday use, and your mother-in-law controls access to them. Your natural appearance without cosmetic enhancement is considered appropriate for a working daughter-in-law, even if it makes you look tired and older than your years. Your personal belongings from your childhood home gradually disappear as your mother-in-law decides what's appropriate for you to keep. Books are considered unnecessary for married women and are often given away or destroyed. Jewelry is locked away for safekeeping, meaning you can't access it without permission. Even small mementos and keepsakes that have sentimental value are deemed clutter that interferes with your focus on your new duties. The letters you occasionally receive from your birth family are read by your mother-in-law before being given to you, if they're given to you at all. She screens the contents for inappropriate sentiments or information that might make you homesick or dissatisfied with your current situation. News about your parents' health, your siblings' activities, or events in your old neighborhood is often censored or withheld entirely. Your opportunities for social interaction outside your new household are strictly limited and carefully supervised. You might occasionally be allowed to visit female relatives or attend religious ceremonies, but these excursions are rare and brief. Most of your social contact comes through the other women in your household, and these relationships are complicated by the power dynamics and competing interests that govern family life. The prospect of pregnancy, which initially seemed like a distant possibility, becomes an immediate concern as your mother-in-law begins calculating your monthly cycles and monitoring your behavior for signs of conception. Every symptom, every change in appetite or energy level, every minor physical complaint is analyzed for its potential significance. The pressure to conceive quickly is constant and makes your most private bodily functions matters of public interest. Your husband's attitude toward you remains largely unchanged as the months pass. He treats you with polite indifference, fulfilling his sexual obligations without enthusiasm or consideration for your comfort. Your relationship exists primarily to produce children and maintain household harmony, not to provide emotional support or companionship. Any expectations you might have had about developing affection or intimacy are gradually abandoned as unrealistic fantasies. The seasonal changes that once brought variety and interest to your life now primarily affect your workload and responsibilities. Summer means more laundry as everyone sweats through their clothes more frequently. Winter means more fuel to haul, more fires to tend, and more indoor confinement with family members who grow increasingly irritable in the cold. Spring brings house cleaning that lasts for weeks, while autumn means food preservation that requires back-breaking labor. Your education continues through direct criticism and painful correction rather than gentle instruction. Every mistake is pointed out immediately and harshly. Every imperfection in your work becomes a reflection of your character and upbringing. You learn your new family's preferences and customs through trial and error, with the errors resulting in public humiliation and additional work as punishment. The reality of your situation becomes increasingly clear as your first year of marriage progresses. You're not a beloved daughter-in-law being welcomed into a loving family. You're an expensive servant whose performance is constantly evaluated and found lacking. Your happiness, comfort, and well-being are irrelevant to your value as long as you can work hard and produce children. The other women in your household, who initially seemed sympathetic to your situation, gradually reveal their true attitudes as you settle into the family dynamics. They're not cruel by nature, but they're grateful to have someone below them in the hierarchy, and they're not about to sacrifice their own small advantages to help you. Your suffering is the price of their slightly improved status, and they're willing to pay it. Your physical condition continues to deteriorate as the demands of your new life take their toll. Your hands become permanently stained and calloused from constant work with harsh chemicals and rough materials. Your back aches from bending over washing tubs and scrub brushes. Your feet hurt constantly from standing and walking on surfaces that provide no cushioning or support for your deformed bones. The infections and health problems that develop are treated as inconveniences rather than medical conditions requiring care. A fever that makes you dizzy and weak is reason to assign you lighter work, not to provide rest and treatment. Cuts and burns from kitchen work are bandaged quickly and ignored afterward. Your body is viewed as a tool that should function reliably regardless of its condition. Your sleep becomes increasingly fragmented as your responsibilities expand and your anxiety about your performance grows. You lie awake worrying about the next day's tasks, reviewing your mistakes and planning how to avoid similar errors in the future. The constant worry about tomorrow's failures haunts whatever rest you manage to steal between your mother-in-laws, nocturnal summons, and the rooster's dawn announcement of another day of servitude. Your menstrual cycles become matters of intense family scrutiny as months pass without the pregnancy everyone expects. Your mother-in-law tracks your bleeding with the precision of an accountant, noting when it arrives, how heavy it is, and what it might indicate about your fertility. The absence of pregnancy after 6 months of marriage becomes a source of increasingly pointed comments and worried consultations with physicians who examine you like defective merchandise. The treatments prescribed for your apparent fertility problems are both humiliating and painful. Herbal concoctions that taste like boiled weeds and make you violently nauseous. Acupuncture sessions where needles are inserted in intimate areas, while male physicians discuss your reproductive organs as if you're not in the room. Special diets that eliminate most foods you enjoy while requiring you to consume things like ground deer antler and bird's nest soup that cost more than your family's monthly rice allowance. Your husband's attitude toward these fertility treatments reveals his own anxiety about producing heirs. He becomes more demanding in his sexual approaches, while simultaneously growing more distant emotionally. You're not a wife to him anymore, just a malfunctioning piece of reproductive equipment that needs fixing. The mechanical nature of your intimate encounters becomes even more pronounced as pressure mounts for you to conceive. The gossip among the neighborhood women about your childless state becomes impossible to ignore. Whispered conversations stop when you enter rooms. Other daughters-in-law are praised for their quick pregnancies, while you're offered increasingly desperate advice about conception. Your reputation within the extended family network begins to suffer as months pass without the announcement of pregnancy that would validate your worth. Your mother-in-law's patience with your failure to conceive manifests in increasingly harsh treatment and additional work assignments. If you can't fulfill your primary function as a daughter-in-law, you'll need to prove your value through exceptional domestic service. Your daily workload expands to include tasks previously assigned to servants, while your food portions shrink and your privileges disappear entirely. The financial pressure your continued childlessness creates affects the entire household's mood and stability. Your husband's family borrowed money to pay for your wedding and support your daily needs with the expectation that you would quickly produce sons who could eventually contribute to the family's economic well-being. Your failure to conceive makes you an ongoing expense rather than an investment, and this economic reality influences every aspect of your treatment. Your physical health deteriorates further under the combined stress of overwork, poor nutrition, fertility treatments, and constant anxiety about your performance. You develop chronic headaches that make it difficult to concentrate on your tasks. Your hands shake from exhaustion and malnutrition. Your hair begins falling out in clumps, though you're forbidden from cutting it, because that might affect your feminine appeal to whatever supernatural forces control conception. The seasonal festivals that once provided breaks from routine now become additional sources of stress as your childless state becomes more obvious. At family gatherings, pregnant women and new mothers receive special treatment and congratulations while you serve them food and endure pointed questions about your own reproductive timeline. Children run around the courtyard while you clean up after them, a constant reminder of your failure to produce similar offspring. Your relationship with other women in the household grows more strained as your status declines with each childless month. The servants begin to treat you with less respect because they sense your falling position in the family hierarchy. Your sisters-in-law make increasingly pointed comments about their own successful pregnancies and child-rearing experiences. Even your husband's unmarried sisters begin to look down on you as a cautionary example of failed womanhood. So there you have it. Your life as a woman in Imperial China, where your feet were broken so you couldn't run. Your mind was ignored so you couldn't think. And your body was sold so you couldn't choose. From birth to marriage, you existed as someone else's investment, measured in inches of bound feet and ounces of obedience. Sweet dreams, and maybe appreciate that alarm clock tomorrow morning.